would like to announce that we have set up a Bring Mollie Tibbetts Home Safe Reward Fund at First State Bank here in Brooklyn, Iowa. We believe that Mollie is still alive, and if someone has abducted her, we are pleading with you to please release her.
Those were the choked words that Mollie Tibbetts' mother uttered in despair. A young girl suddenly disappeared in broad daylight, right on the familiar road she passed every afternoon. Not a trace, not a witness, not a cry for help. In the blink of an eye, the entire small town of Brooklyn, Iowa, was plunged into extreme fear, a fear that had never appeared in this peaceful countryside. On July 18, 2018, Mollie Tibbetts, a 20-year-old student at the University of Iowa, did not return from her usual jog. And from that moment, a series of painful questions began. Who was the last person to see her? What happened? And will she ever have a chance to return? On the evening of July 18, 2018, Mollie Tibbetts, as usual, left her boyfriend's house in Brooklyn, Iowa, to go jogging around the small residential area. It was a hot summer day, the sky was clear, and no one in the small town could have guessed that a tragedy was about to occur. Mollie was wearing sweatpants, wearing headphones, and running along the quiet roads, lined with cornfields stretching to the horizon. At the same time, a man named Christian Bahena Rivera, 24, drove through the area. Rivera worked at a local farm and lived nearby. When he saw Mollie, he turned his car around and stopped on the side of the road. Rivera got out of the car and walked in the direction she was running. According to his later testimony, Rivera said he approached Mollie and tried to strike up a conversation. Mollie asked him to leave and said she would call the police. Rivera said that at that moment, he fell into a state of panic and lost control of his actions. What happened next, Rivera himself could not describe clearly, other than admitting that he attacked and murdered Mollie. There were no witnesses. There were no cameras. It all happened on a deserted road, in the middle of lonely fields. Rivera later confessed to putting Mollie's body in his car and hiding it in a cornfield a few miles away. When night fell, Mollie did not return home. Family and friends gradually felt uneasy when she did not answer the phone, did not show up for work. At this time, no one knew that a tragedy had quietly occurred in the heart of a seemingly peaceful town. The next morning, as the first light of day crept across the familiar cornfields, Mollie Tibbetts' family and friends began to sense something was wrong. The young woman, who had always been punctual and responsible, had been silent all night. Mollie had not shown up for her scheduled shift, nor had she texted or called anyone. Mollie's boyfriend was the first to notice something was wrong. He quickly contacted family and friends, but no one had any information. Concern quickly turned to panic, and an emergency call was made to the police. Within hours, the authorities were on the scene, and a search was underway. In a small town where everyone knew each other, the disappearance of a young woman in broad daylight was shocking. Police gathered information from relatives, checked security cameras at intersections, gas stations, and the routes Mollie often ran. The scary thing was that no one had seen or heard anything unusual. There were no screams, no signs of a struggle, no reports of suspicious strangers. The silence made the search even more difficult. Police quickly narrowed down the running route and launched a large-scale search operation with hundreds of volunteers. Dense cornfields and small trails were searched thoroughly, with the faint hope that Mollie might have been injured and still have a chance of survival. But hope was fading. There were no clothes left behind, no physical traces, no signal from Mollie's phone or sports watch. Police were forced to consider all theories. She left voluntarily, had an accident, or worst of all, abduction or murder. The initial scene did not provide any concrete clues. There was only an eerie emptiness, as if Mollie had vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, fear spread throughout the community. The media began reporting. Posters of Mollie were plastered everywhere, and social media was flooded with prayers. But deep down, many began to fear that a tragedy had actually occurred.
All right, good morning. Mollie's father now saying that her disappearance may be the result of a misguided relationship, but offering no evidence to back up that theory. Her family desperate for answers after weeks of searches and interviews have turned up empty.
Speculation began to emerge, but it was all just fragments, and fear had now turned to despair. On August 21st, 2018, after more than a month of searching, police discovered the body of Mollie Tibbetts in a remote cornfield in Poweshiek County. The scene was desolate, with only tall corn rows and a loose layer of leaves covering the body, suggesting a hasty and unprepared concealment. An autopsy confirmed that Mollie had been stabbed multiple times, with the wounds concentrated in her upper body. Forensics estimated the time of death to be the same as the night she went missing, ruling out prolonged captivity or abuse. Biological traces, including DNA found on the victim's clothing and in the suspect's vehicle, became important evidence that led the investigation. One detail that caught the attention of investigators was that the victim's body bore no signs of a struggle at the scene, indicating that the incident occurred in a short moment, when the victim had no time to resist or call for help. The coldness of the field and the nature of the clues at the scene painted the first picture of this heartbreaking tragedy. What was left behind was not only forensic evidence, but also the haunting memory of a life journey cut short so suddenly and cruelly. When Mollie Tibbetts' body was found, police entered a pivotal phase of their investigation. More than a month of fruitless searching had finally yielded the first clue, but it also raised the urgent question: who could have done this? From the start, investigators canvassed everyone who had been near Mollie's frequent jogging areas. Security cameras from homes and businesses within a few miles were collected and scrutinized. A grainy but valuable video captured a black Chevrolet Malibu driving slowly along the side of the road near the time of Mollie's disappearance. The car became the center of attention. From the license plate and registration data, police quickly narrowed down the owner: Christian Bahena Rivera, an immigrant who worked on a nearby farm. He lived quietly, had no criminal record, and had not raised any suspicions before. It was this normality that made Rivera a mysterious figure in the eyes of the investigating agency. When first called in for questioning, Rivera appeared calm, asserting that he had nothing to do with Mollie's disappearance. However, when confronted with a video showing his car appearing near the victim, he began to falter. Detectives noticed gaps in his testimony from time to location, all lacking the necessary connection. The interrogations lasted for hours. Rivera initially denied any involvement, but gradually the messy details of his story became clearer. With patience and skill, investigators used psychological tactics, showing Rivera that any lies would only get him deeper into trouble. The turning point in the investigation came when Rivera admitted that he had seen Mollie and followed her while she was jogging. He said that Mollie had asked him to leave and threatened to call the police. Rivera said that he panicked and that he did not remember what happened next. He only remembered taking the girl's body in his car and hiding it in a cornfield. This was a psychological twist that no one had anticipated. From an unknown man, Rivera suddenly became the prime suspect. However, the police understood that a confession was not enough to convict them. They needed physical evidence to strengthen their case. When searching Rivera's car, the police found a small blood stain on the back seat. DNA analysis confirmed that it was Mollie Tibbetts' blood. This was the key link that connected the suspect's confession to the undeniable scientific evidence. In addition, other traces that matched the scene helped complete the picture of the case. On August 21, 2018, Christian Bahena Rivera was officially arrested and charged with first-degree murder. He was escorted in silence, his face calm but no longer confident. The police released the information to the press, and the incident quickly became a national focus.
We wanted to pass along some information to you, as well as the community and the nation as a whole. Behind me, I have representatives from the Iowa Department of Public Safety, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office. What I'd like to do first is read a brief statement to you, and then after that, I'll be happy to take as many questions as I can. A first-degree murder charge was filed today in connection with the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts, who was last seen jogging in Brooklyn, Iowa on July 18, 2018. A complaint and affidavit names Christian Bahena Rivera, age 24, who resides in rural Poweshiek County, and he has been charged with murder in the first degree. Dozens of law enforcement officials from local, state, and federal agencies were involved in the investigation after the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts. A body was discovered early this morning in a farm field southeast of Brooklyn, Iowa. The identity has not been confirmed, however, we believe it to be the body of Mollie Tibbetts. A complaint and affidavit, which will be provided to you, will provide the details and of allegations against Mr. Rivera. Charges were filed in the Poweshiek County District Court. The case will be prosecuted by the Iowa Attorney General's Area Prosecution Division, and first-degree murder carries a penalty of life without the possibility of parole.
With the suspect arrested and key evidence coming to light, the formal legal process began, a necessary step before the case goes to trial. A complete file was submitted to the court with clear arguments, detailed statements, surveillance video, DNA results, and the location of the victim's body. Forensic experts, investigators, and prosecutors worked together to build a tight file, leaving no loopholes. The investigation process relied not only on physical evidence, but also on a long psychological battle between the suspect and the authorities. They did not let emotions overwhelm them, always maintaining a clear mind to gradually lead the suspect to reveal loopholes. The Mollie Tibbetts case is not only a journey to find justice for a young girl, but also a testament to the perseverance, methodical, and professional nature of those working in criminal investigations. Every detail, no matter how small, is carefully considered, and it is that carefulness that has helped the truth to be revealed after long days of doubt and pain. In May 2021, nearly 3 years after Mollie Tibbetts was murdered, the trial of Christian Bahena Rivera officially took place in the Poweshiek County Courthouse. This is one of the most high-profile cases in Iowa, attracting special attention from the media and the public across the United States. The name Mollie Tibbetts has become a symbol not only of a personal tragedy, but also of profound debates about many social issues. The courtroom was packed, all eyes were on the defendant, a man with a quiet appearance, showing little emotion. On the opposite side was Mollie's family, who had spent nearly 3 years living in pain and waiting for the final answer. During the trial, prosecutors presented a full array of evidence: surveillance video, DNA found on the suspect's car, previous confessions, and even traces from the scene. They argued that Christian Bahena Rivera stalked, attacked, and killed Mollie with intent. The evidence tied together, creating a picture that was hard to dismiss. The defense argued that Rivera had been coerced into confessing, that there were other possibilities that had not been fully investigated. They even raised the possibility that there were other individuals involved and that Rivera was simply a scapegoat. However, when all the elements were put together, the initial testimony, the forensic evidence, and the scene, this argument was quickly disproved. The most shocking moment of the trial came when Mollie's family stood up to speak. In choked but determined words, they spoke not only of their own loss, but also of the senseless taking of life. The atmosphere in the courtroom was heavy, with many people unable to hold back their tears. Finally, after days of trial and just a few hours of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict.
And my judgment relative to sentence is based on that which will provide maximum opportunity for your rehabilitation, at the same time protect the community from further offenses by you and others. Mr. Bahena Rivera, you and you alone forever change the lives of those who love Mollie Tibbetts. And for that, you and you alone will receive the following sentence. It is the order and judgment of this court, acting pursuant to the provisions of Section 902 of the Code of Iowa, that the defendant B is hereby committed to the custody of Iowa Department of Corrections for a lifetime sentence with no eligibility for parole.
Christian Bahena Rivera was convicted of first-degree murder. The sentence of life in prison without parole was handed down, ending a lengthy legal journey, but also opening up extensive debate outside the courtroom. The public reaction was overwhelming. Many expressed relief that justice had been served, while others argued bitterly about immigration and the fairness of the trial. Mollie's family, though heartbroken, urged the public to remember her as a vibrant person, rather than having her name forever associated with political controversy. The death of Mollie Tibbetts left an unfillable void in the hearts of her family, friends, and the small community where she lived. A young girl full of ambition and a bright future was gone because of an unforeseen, fateful moment. The pain did not stop at those who loved Mollie, but also spread to the whole society as a painful reminder of the fragility of human life. This case is not only a story of a random crime, but also a wake-up call for vigilance and personal safety in daily life. In an increasingly complex world, everyone needs to equip themselves with self-protection skills and be sensitive to even the smallest signs of abnormality. At the same time, it also reflects the pivotal role of the law in bringing the truth to light and protecting core human values. In addition, the case also raises profound questions about how society responds to tragedies. Are we too quick to label others based on their origin, nationality, or political background? Or is it more important that we maintain full sympathy for the victims, the innocent people whose lives were taken, and find ways to prevent similar tragedies in the future? Because sometimes tragedies do not start from big things, but from indifference to the smallest signs. So what do you think is the biggest lesson from this case? And more importantly, what would you do if one day you or a loved one faced such seemingly invisible dangers,